The Pharisees thought, and the Jews in general thought, that if you were blessed with the good things of life, you were being favored by God because you were a good person. And if things were not going well with you, that was a sign that you were a sinner and you were being punished for your sinfulness. I think we're a little bit more sophisticated than that today. Although you do hear it occasionally said, well, they're poor because they deserve it, because they won't get off their butt. They're too lazy to work or something like that. There's a slight variation on the theme, but you do hear it. Of course, Jesus is turning the whole thing upside down, as he usually does with our common beliefs. There is grounds in the Old Testament for believing the way the Pharisees did, but they're not very strong grounds. And there's many, many more places in the old scriptures where the poor are not condemned, but are welcomed. And Jesus, of course, brings that to the highest point. It's interesting, in this reading, the poor man gets a name, but the rich man doesn't. And the rich man knew the poor man's name who lay at his gate. He knew what his name was, which means that he didn't go unobserved, but he did go ignored as far as any kind of alleviation of poverty was concerned. The message of the scripture today seems to me to be that if we do not keep an eye on the poor, and that doesn't just mean the economically poor, that means anyone in need. Sometimes the wealthiest people in the land are the poorest in the land because of other needs that they need to have fulfilled by others, not self-fulfillment. And so I think the Lord is calling us to be aware of the poverty around us. People sometimes think that they're just normal people and middle class or lower middle class, and some not. Then they go on a ministry trip to South America or Africa or someplace and see what real poverty looks like, and then they realize how wealthy they are. That applies to all areas of poverty, not just material poverty. And the message is very clear from the scripture today, even from the prophet Amos, that the alleviation of the poor is something which is obligatory upon the children of God. The way we do it will differ under the circumstances. It amazes me that looking at poverty from an international point of view, we are the wealthiest people, we are the rich man in this case, and yet we ship more guns overseas than we do plows. And we often say, well, the best way to help a poor person is not to give him something to eat, but teach him how to grow food. But we supply more guns than plows. But of course, it's easy to talk about the national or the international scene because that really gets the spotlight off me. And if we don't bring the spotlight back on ourselves, then we're probably avoiding the issue. Recently, the Pope Francis said something to the effect that a comfortable living can lead to gentrification of the heart. And I said to myself, what kind of preventive medicine am I using?